So when you hear Next.js, what's the first thing that pops into your head? For a long time, the answer was probably blazing fast static websites or really sleek front ends. But that's only a tiny piece of the puzzle. The reality is, Next.js has quietly become an absolute powerhouse for building entire full-stack applications. So let's just get right to it and tackle that big question head-on. Is Next.js really just for static sites? Well, we're about to see how that's just the starting line. This framework gives you a complete toolkit, taking you on a journey from what the user sees all the way down to the data. So here's our roadmap for this explainer. First, we're going to bust that old myth about Next.js. Then we'll build our way down the stack, starting with the UI, then diving into the integrated API. We'll even pick up some crucial design lessons before connecting our app to the big wide world and seeing how it all clicks together. All right, first things first, let's really challenge that old way of thinking. For years, Next.js was the king of static pages. But honestly, the game has completely changed. We're now talking about building full-on, dynamic, data-driven apps, all from one single codebase. Every amazing app needs a fantastic user interface, right? But let's be real, building those complex dashboards and admin panels from scratch is a massive time sink. And this is where the Next.js ecosystem just completely shines, letting you build out a rich user experience incredibly fast. And it's a perfectly fair question, isn't it? With so many powerful templates out there, why would you waste weeks or even months reinventing the wheel on things like tables, charts, and forms? Using a pre-built dashboard lets you skip all that and get right to building the features that make your app special.
Okay, let's make this tangible. Take a look at a popular template like Tail Admin. The free version, it's already a great starting point. You get a full dashboard and over 30 components. But check out the jump to the Pro version. 7 dashboards, over 500 UI elements. That's not just a small step up. That's a massive boost to your development speed.
And hey, Tail Admin is just the tip of the iceberg. The ecosystem is huge. You need something based on Material UI? There's a template for that. Chakra UI? You got it. Bootstrap? Covered. Whether you want something slick and modern like Horizon UI or something really focused on accessibility, there is a starting point for pretty much any project you can dream up. Okay, so we've got a beautiful, fast UI, but what is a UI without data? It's just a pretty shell. So where does that data come from? Well, that brings us to the next layer of our stack, the integrated API. This is where you build your backend logic right inside your Next.js application. Just think about the old way of doing things for a sec. You'd have your React front end in one repository, your Node backend in another, and then all this complex wiring to get them to talk to each other. Next.js just completely changes that paradigm. Your API lives in the same project as your UI. And the best part, when you deploy, each of those API routes just becomes a serverless function. Basically, a little bit of code that runs on demand and scales automatically. No server management required. And getting started is surprisingly simple. You can spin up a full GraphQL API, which is just a super efficient way for your front end to ask for exactly the data it needs in about 5 steps. You create a file, install a couple of helpers, and then define your schema. That's just the shape of your data, and the resolvers, which are the functions that go and get it. A quick bit of config, and boom, your serverless backend is live. But just building an API isn't really enough. The real art is designing one that other developers find intuitive, powerful, and, dare I say, fun to use. So let's borrow some wisdom from the experts at Propel and look at a few key principles for crafting a really great API. This is such a critical question to ask. What is it that separates an API that's just functional from one that developers actually love working with? It really all boils down to a handful of design principles that put the developer first. The first rule, and maybe the most important, is this: always work backward from what the developer is trying to build. It is so tempting to just expose your database tables directly as API endpoints, but that's thinking about your server's needs, not your users. A great API is designed from the client's perspective, giving them the exact data they need in the exact shape they need it. Next up, this idea of a low barrier, high ceiling. What does that mean? Well, the simple things should be dead simple. A basic query should be incredibly easy to write. But when a developer needs to do something really complex, like combining a bunch of different filters, the API should make that possible. You should never sacrifice power for the sake of simplicity. You need both. And finally, when it comes to changing data, your actions or mutations should be meaningful. So instead of some generic action like modify data pool, you should have specific actions that match exactly what the user is trying to do, like enable syncing. This makes the code so much clearer and it drastically cuts down on potential bugs.
So at this point, our application has a UI and an internal API. The last piece of the puzzle is connecting it to the outside world, to databases, to real-time services, and to other platforms. So how does our API actually talk to the rest of the internet? Well, there are a few key methods. First, it can pull data from a serverless database like Fauna. Second, it can listen for real-time updates using WebSockets from a service like Pusher, so our app can react to events as they happen. And third, it can use webhooks to automatically push data out to other services. I want you to imagine a live poll happening on a website. As people vote, a service like Pusher sends a tiny message to our Next.js app. Our front end is listening, and it instantly updates the chart in front of the user. No page refresh, no waiting. That right there is the power of connecting to real-time services. Now, webhooks are another crucial piece, and they kind of work in the opposite direction. Instead of pulling data in, a webhook pushes data out. So, for example, when a new user signs up in your app, a webhook could instantly push their info to your email marketing tool. It's all about automated, real-time integrations. So let's just step back and take a breath. We've gone on a journey from a simple user interface all the way to a globally connected application, and we did it all within the Next.js framework. What we've really built here is a complete, full-stack toolkit. Let's just quickly run through that journey one last time. We kicked things off by building our UI at lightning speed using templates. Then, we gave it a brain with an integrated serverless API. We didn't just build it, we designed it with care. And finally, we connected it to the world with databases and external services. And, all of this, it brings us to a much bigger, more thought-provoking question. As frameworks like Next.js keep blurring the lines between the client and the server, what does that actually mean for the future of specialized front-end and back-end roles? It's definitely something to think about as these incredibly powerful, integrated toolkits become the new normal for how we build for the web.